time to rejoin the conversation. And we are back, and okay, here we go. Party politics, or in this case, something a little less of politics. So, here's what I was thinking. Like I said earlier, in the movie The Dark Knight, Harvey Dent says either you die a hero or live long enough to become a villain. But I've noticed that a few people in the culture have been outliving their hero moment. The Patriots, Justin Timberlake, who doesn't like Justin Timberlake? But there's a lot of people these days that don't like Justin Timberlake. Jay-Z, Kanye, Eminem, even Beyonce for some people is starting to lose her luster. And I'm wondering, what makes people turn on people for what seems to sheerly be they've just been winning too long?
Let me take the Patriots, since I'm kind of an East Coast guy, right? You got to think about this. Boston's title town. You look at all the titles that the Red Sox and the Celtics and the Bruins and the Patriots have won. Mm-hmm. It's pretty impressive. So the Patriots
Bostonians are pretty tough folk. I would say.
You got to look at it. It really is kind of title town. And you look at the Patriots, who have formed this group of players and coaches that come and go. They insert players in and out all the time that you never even heard of. Mm-hmm. And their motto is do your job. And they don't care who you are. If you're not doing your job, not only is the coach going to get on you, the player's going to get on you. So this is the culture that they've created. So they created this winning culture, and they're in the Super Bowl almost every year. They don't always win it, but sooner or later, you get tired of seeing.
What 6 times in the last 9 years?
Yeah.
I heard a stat on NFL Network today that the Patriots have been at least to the championship game every year since 2010.
Ooh.
And they won 6 out of the 8 Super, or I guess 5 out of the 8.
Yeah,
8
5.
Super
Bowls.
Yep. So that's pretty phenomenal record overall. Mm-hmm. And I remember the time they got to the first Super Bowl back in '85, and we had Tony Eason. We had Grogan's quarterback. He got hurt, and Tony Eason took him to the Super Bowl, and we got our asses whipped by the badass Chicago Bears, Mr. Rio.
Hey, I'm just saying.
Just saying.
85 was a good year.
but we got there, And then we got beat by Green Bay too. So there was a couple of teams that got us early on, but we got there.
Boo.
But the thing is that they have won for so long, and I got to admit, I'm sure I was rooting for the Patriots in this last Super Bowl, which, by the way, was probably the best football game I've seen in many, many years.
Yeah, that was a great game.
That was a good game, but you kind of actually, even I kind of actually like to see Philly win, because Philly is a working man's team. They're a very kind of fun team. The Patriots are a very regimented team.
So do you think it's just people are just tired of seeing them win, or because some of the other names that I've mentioned have also seemingly been winning for a decade or longer in their fields, and I've noticed they get similar, detraction. Like there's always a core, base of people who root for these people, but it seems like the kind of the zeitgeist is saying, okay, I'm tired of you. And I'm just wondering what makes people turn on you.
It's almost a boredom.
Maybe. Okay.
It's a boredom because you get tired of seeing the same show. The series is getting old.
Actually,
we're in our 6th, 7th, or 8th series of this.
That's actually kind of funny because I remember my mom years ago. I remember she saw heard a commercial on the radio for Frankie Beverly and Maze was coming to Chicago.
Oh, that's a crooner.
And so I, just kind of was like, oh, I know you're going to see that one. She said, no, I ain't going to see that. I said, why? And she was like, it's the same show. It's the same show. They haven't changed that show in 40 years. And I was like, okay. Yeah, I understand that. You've seen it already. You don't need to see it again. But do you think it's another reason, and more than just boredom, Chris?
Yeah, I think a lot of it just boils down to jealousy a lot of the time, and it's strange. Like, it's a classic example of when you are the first person to discover a really kick-ass band or an artist or whatever the case is, and you love it. And they've had a couple albums, and you're really kind of in the know. Then they slowly start to get more popular, and like you were saying about the bar that you have been to where Kenny's bartending. Eventually you're like, this is becoming so popular that now all these people I don't like are starting to latch onto this thing that I love.
Right.
And all of a sudden you're like, God, I got to get off this train real fast. And I also think, even though I think a lot of times they feel like they're progressing artistically, or in the case of sports, athletically, like Tom Brady, I'm sure works out probably more than he ever has just to be Tom versus time or whatever the case may be. Eventually, like, when your mom's rooting for the same person you are, you just don't want any part of that. God, what has happened to me?
Yeah.
And also, you get this sense that they.
You know what? I didn't think of that because you're right. I don't want to sit there and watch the award show and me and my mom are both clapping for Jay-Z. I don't want to see. I don't want that.
Sure.
I want you to get disinterested and leave the room and something else. Yeah.
And I also think at some point it forces, if you're that level of an artist, it forces you to do safer, blander, more pop culture-y, everybody loves it kind of stuff to maintain your level of success. And I think the best example of that is Justin Timberlake's halftime show, which took zero risks at all. It wasn't that it wasn't a great halftime show. Mm-hmm. It was that you expected something more and maybe a little edgier or a little riskier because he's such a phenomenal artist.
Right.
And he turned in all the hits. And it was fun.
I mean, it was a good show.
Right. Eventually, it's the Beatles versus the Stones. The Beatles are fine. They're great. You can't find a bad song in the catalog, but the Stones will come out and knock on your ass and run you right over and then leave. And that's what's kind of cool about it.
Yeah.
They've never lost that. So there's something to be said a little bit about the underdog, and the guys that not everybody loves. They're a little more fun to root for.
Yeah, it's funny. When you just said that, it made me think of Beatles, Stones. It made me think of Michael Jackson and Prince.
I was going to bring Michael up because he definitely followed that path.
Yeah, it was like he definitely, got safer and safer. Like you say, not that the music wasn't still incredible, but Prince just didn't do that. Prince got edgier and edgier and stranger to some degree, but it was still so good. Like you say, he'd lay you on your ass and then hey, thanks Chicago, and you're like, what the hell did I just witness? And so it's definitely something. It got me to thinking about artists, and particularly artists that seem to reinvent every album. Like they're really a different persona.
U2.
They
always have a similar sound, but they always go a direction that leads to a good song that you like to listen to, and they still are able to. I think the hardest thing for an artist at any stage to do is to come out continually with relevant hits that is new music. And you can't deny that U2 has managed to do that for the most part.
Yeah. Well, coming from somebody that I know is not a big fan of U2.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And that's I think of them as exactly the opposite. And I will give them credit for, I would say, Octane Baby. And what was it? Zeropa was the one after that. I would say it was a wild departure from their normal sound. And particularly Octane Baby was successful. Zeropa was a massive failure, which their immediate reaction was to go back to really safe U2 sounding songs.
Which is what they do.
On All That You Can't Leave Behind, followed up by this latest one, which is nothing but U2 songs right and left. And they were very conscious. I remember they were pressing REM all the time to go back and write REM songs because they were really pushing the envelope, and their album sales fell off, completely fell off. And YouTube was like, go back and write some R.E.M. songs so we can go on these stadium tours again.
Right.
But older bands will always do that, because when they go on stadium tours, people don't really want to hear their new music. They want to hear their old music.
Except for when the album is out. So I remember Octane Baby coming out was what, 93, 94?
Yeah.
Right in there.
And they played
everybody's
Arrowhead.
like, God, this sucks. This is the worst music. Play the stuff off of Unforgettable Fire. Play Joshua Tree, blah, blah, blah. And now it's like, oh my God, play that stuff from Octane Baby. That's a classic. Oh my God. You know,
which is actually pretty hilarious to me. I think the one person I think on my list of people that the public turned on, like hard turned on. Well, he had a lot to do with it himself, but Kanye. I know we are both Kanye fans, but no two Kanye albums sound alike. That's what I love about Kanye. Like, he will push the envelope. Now, it may, and they always hit platinum. Always. They may start slow and build slow. Some of them may explode out of the gate, but every Kanye album sounds different than the one before. And I personally appreciate an artist that's willing to even piss his own fan base off to do something brand new. You know, as you're talking about new music. I was trying to think, and maybe the both of you can help. But I was trying to think of other than the Patriots or other than musicians. I was trying to think of actors or other than people who got drugged down in the Me Too thing, because I don't want to go there. that's a longer conversation that people have kind of turned on.
Well, I think you need to go talk about Jay-Z and Beyonce, because I think this is an interesting dynamic that they ran into. Is because they kind of came out of their roots, and they became this shiny couple on the hill all of a sudden.
Yeah, in a lot of ways.
You got to remember when she did the Queen thing, and when was that? Was that a Grammy show she did? No, I think it was a special she did or something where she ended up being the queen and the throne and the gold and everything else.
Oh, yeah.
All right, and I don't follow their music that much, so I'm not totally in tune with anything. I'm not going to tell you I am anyway, because I'm not.
I think that was just a riff on her nickname. I think it was a clever.
Because her fans kind of coined her Queen Bee.
Right, Queen Bee. And that had been around for a while.
Yeah.
She, to her credit, in my mind, was cool enough to play along with it and make it a little bit of a gag.
I'm not saying she did it, but I'm also saying that she would have alienated some of the more worker bee type people.
I guess if you didn't know the backstory, I could see you coming on and going, "What the hell's this?"
Yeah. Well, because I remember when Jay was starting the Tidal streaming service. I remember the amount of hate that I saw online. Like, what is he doing? Who does he think he is? All of that. Surrounding, and of course, it's turned out to be one of the best things that he could have ever done, and it's still a slow uphill thing. But when you're talking about subscription services, versus Pandora, Spotify that has free tiers, having 4 million, 5 million, built-in subscribers is not the worst idea in the world to but I do remember how many people were hating on him and the idea of Tidal. And now I do think the rollout of Tidal was bad. I think the whole press conference when you got 20 of the most A-list people in music standing up there going, and no longer are, the artist gonna get it stuck to them, and with Tidal you're gonna, and so we're like every one of you from Jay to Jason Aldean, like every one of you is doing very well with yourselves. So I think, I think some of that was problematic, but
how do you compare like P. Diddy to Jay-Z? Because P. Diddy's managed to maintain a different image in my mind.
No, not in the culture. Not in hip hop culture. He is. The funny thing in hip hop, he's equally as hated as he is admired.
Really?
Because he is in a lot of circles kind of credited for the. He really found a way to commercially produce something that was before it pretty raw. But really, he wasn't the one that figured it out. I mean, the West Coast artists, Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg and that whole camp of artists, they had figured it out. What he figured out how to do was make that New York, make that polished sound a New York sound, and
then diversify with his clothing.
And so between that and the clothing lines and all of that, he definitely shares a very strange duality. He's respected because his business acumen is amazing, but at the same time, from the kind of the hardcore fans of the genre, a lot of them hate his guts for how he commercialized the sound, and me personally, I've never hated Puff. In fact, I've always admired what he was able to do with the sound to make it more accessible to more homes, but but at the same time, everybody who hates him is ordering Ciroc at the club.
Let me ask you a question. Because I don't understand rap culture. I try to pay attention because I'm in podcasts and a lot of our is cultural based. And with the people that hate him would be the ones that more are in the heavy gangster rap. And that
actually, I wouldn't even say gangster rap. It's more people who. Actually, a lot of the people who hate him are the people who didn't like the infusion of gangster rap either. Like they really liked the pure earlier '90s
hip-hop,
New York styled hip hop. That was
B.I.G.
Yeah, it was before Big, because that was one of Puff's artists. It was definitely the sound was just grittier. To put a word on it. It was, I always say there was...
who was those artists that did that?
Oh, well, I mean, really, you're talking about the, Eric B. and Rakims and Big Daddy Kane's and KRS-Ones and, there was a ton of artists that, but I think what it was
you could go back to early Public Enemy.
Yeah, Public Enemy, and so...
What about was it Watu Clan?
Wu-Tang? Yeah, Wu-Tang. Yeah, like a lot of people liked, because it was more gritty, and I always use the term industrial. It was really clangy, tinny.
The production value was much quicker, much faster.
Yeah.
It wasn't. I mean, you guys started getting into, particularly Dr. Dre as a producer, was overproduced. Very hyper. I think a lot more melodic.
A lot more melodic
in a lot of ways. Where I think East Coast is far more rhythmic and less melodic in some certain instances. So I mean, there was a definitive change. So that was early '90s was the clash.
Yeah. So when NWA came out, late '80s, that was a Dr. Dre production. But
that was totally West Coast.
Completely different.
But that's completely different from his album, Dr. Dre's album, The Chronic, and the Snoop Dogg Doggy Style album. Like, those are melodic,
hyper
melodic, hyper musical albums, and produced flawlessly.
And it had a weird West Coasty relaxed vibe.
Yeah.
It was just weird. It was completely.
We're drinking gin and juice and smoking some pot and cruising in our car.
Well, no, it was a lot more than that. It was a lot of still killing a lot of people, just doing it.
But it was.
You think of Doggy Style? I mean, holy crap!
That
was on trial for murder.
Murder was the case, and I mean, these were some.
It was intense.
But even though the subject matters were really harsh, musically, the music bed was so gorgeous.
But that was the shift. So
and that was
NWA doing that same song.
Man.
It would have been 1,000 times different. But you didn't change the content necessarily. You changed the way you were delivering the content, and all of a sudden you have a whole new genre.
Yeah,
which was incredible.
And Puff saw the shift, and he was like, "Oh shit, they're on to something over there. I need to figure out how to package that for New York." Enter the Notorious B.I.G. And the genre has never been the same since. I mean, because you take if you really think about like a Notorious B.I.G., he really was a gangster rapper, but he was able to storytell in ways that we hadn't heard before, and then musically, the stuff Puff was kind of pushing him to rap over was super melodic. It was a lot of
strange 70s,
70s and 80s R&B loops,
weird stuff.
Yeah, but it just worked.
I mean, even at times soft rock loops. 70s soft rock loops, and they would go over like, this doesn't make any sense, and yet it made total sense in the context. Which is really cool.
So, but because of how sonically he shifted the culture, there was and still is a faction of really hardcore hip hop fans that were, let's say, Wu-Tang fans, that just can't stand Puff and anything he puts out. Except they will order Ciroc at the club.
And I would give you, I guess, I could give you a classic rock example and then a more modern example. So a lot of particularly the Stones albums, were just, let's set up our amps, let's record this, let's get this done and out the door. So the production quality was definitely not there, which helped it keep kind of a gritty, like you're playing live kind of a feel.
Yeah.
And then
we always liked that about the Stones.
Yeah, absolutely. But take that as a comparison against the Beatles, who just literally lived in a recording studio and just jacked around forever.
Yeah.
These massively overdubbed songs.
Yeah, some of the devices we use in production today were created by the Beatles.
Sure. What they did with a 4-track? They were recording on a 4-track, and yet they made it so technologically advanced, they had to stop touring because they couldn't recreate the songs.
Yeah.
That's why they quit. Part of it was the noise you couldn't hear, but part of it was they had no way of recreating these songs in a stadium at that point. It was impossible because they literally sat in a studio just overdubbing all day long. That was all they did, which is pretty cool in some facets of it.
Great.
But really, if you're a rock purist,
rock.
you're taking some of the Stones albums and go, God, this is ridiculous. This is a band playing live in a bar that I could go see anytime, and that'll knock your socks off too. Very different. Or if you want to go to probably an 80s example, you had all this kind of punk and indie rock, very lo-fi, very in your face.
Right.
And then you have R.E.M. come along to get a Warner Brothers contract and start living in a studio again and overdubbing everything. Making these, lush, well-scored albums, with tons of instrumentation going. And in some ways it was cool for their songs, but also kind of the death of an era at the same time.
Exactly. Exactly.
But let me throw something else on that, though. Allman Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Who are a very interesting band because all the instruments they had and the 2 drum sets they had were able to do a lush, unbelievable full sound and then go out there on the road and hear the same damn thing out of them. Nothing changed. Whatever they played in the studio is what they played on the road.
Yeah.
In fact, so many of their best recordings were literally live recordings that just, Fillmore East
Yeah, great.
Unbelievable
They're
music.
incredible
They
musicians that can
were
fill the
really
space.
a different group that really hit us, and I know obviously they're my favorite band. I fell in love with them because it was just such a rich, full sound and good music, and make it tap your toe and want to get up and dance with your girl, or kick back and smoke a joint and just get back into the music.
I mean, I credit Cher with a lot of that influence, honestly.
Who?
Cher. Which Allman Brother was she hanging
I'm
out
trying to
with?
remember. Yeah, who's
Greg
Cher?
I don't know what happened to Greg.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
I don't
funny.
know what happened,
Actually,
Greg.
it's actually funny when you're thinking about kind of this lush sound, and I always think about how expensive it must have been for like Barry White and oh, good gravy. I'm blanking on his name. Guy who plays chef on South Park.
Oh God, now I'm looking at it too. I'll think of it in a second.
Yeah, but because they went out with orchestras, and I'm thinking how incredibly expensive that must have been to tour with an orchestra.
And think of all the things that killed jazz as jazz going from the 40s and 50s into the 60s.
Oh, yeah.
Part of it is you can't travel with a 12-piece ensemble everywhere you go.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not going to work.
You just can't do it.
Right.
And then to put the nail in that coffin, one of my jazz heroes, Miles Davis, went electric, and was hated on.
Was it the Montreux Festival?
Yeah, Montreux Jazz Festival.
Wait,
It was
wait.
hated on immediate sight for electrifying jazz at all.
Bob Dylan.
Yeah,
Bob Dylan went
yeah.
electric, and everybody
Yeah.
hated him.
Yeah.
Well, wait a second here. I got to go back to Barry White, because I had an 8-track of Barry White. And when you went out on the back
You studied
road,
Barry White's voice, didn't you, Dave?
and you found that little 8-track, and you had your little girl, and you climbed in the back seat of that big Olds 98 or that AMC Pacer, which the seat flipped down in, with the sleeping bag and the pillow.
Can't get enough of your love, baby.
Can't get enough of your love, baby. I'm telling you, podcast land, if you ain't never experienced that, you need to go parking with Barry White, because that's a
Isaac
good
Isaac Hayes.
shit.
Yes, Isaac Hayes.
Children?
Oh, I'm like, why can't I think of his name right now?
Yeah, classic.
Yeah, so
I'm serious though, man.
Yeah.
Barry White got me laid more than once.
yeah, I believe you. So I guess to kind of sum what we're saying, some is boredom. Like you just get tired of seeing the same show. Some people do shoot themselves in the foot, and they talk themselves out of love.
I have a question, though, that goes along with that line. How many of these artists do you think really represent a time and a place and a culture that once the time and the place have shifted? I mean, think of all the different 60s acts. They were so counterculture or revolution. They had a fight, something to fight against. And all of a sudden, it's like, the fight's over. What do we do now?
What do we do
Let's
now?
find
Yeah.
something else to
what do we
sing
sing
about.
about?
It's like
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing that can recreate that cultural moment. It's like, well, you were awesome in the 60s, and you got nothing to say in the 70s, so I got to move on.
Yeah. I
Maybe
think
your fan base gets older.
Yeah, no, I think that's.
I know with me, I listen to a lot less music now than I did as a kid.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a huge thing that I think people overlook. Is that fan bases get older? I'm the
nerd with an audiobook at the gym, because I gotta read it. Learn something.
I'll tell you something interesting. Michelle and I just went out and got a stereo with the turntable, and we're pulling out the old vinyl, and we got some old jazz albums. We had a Charlie Parker tribute.
Oh yeah,
Dizzy Gillespie on it and stuff like that. And I have been shocked at how clear and precise the vinyl is. The sound that I'm getting off the vinyl records.
Is it really your old vinyl records, or are these remastered
vinyl
ones
records,
that
first
have come
pressing.
out? Okay.
And this is the difference. Like we had,
Well,
first pressing of a Dave Brubeck.
Yeah, like vinyl
stuff.
is definitely
It really
it's definitely a warmer medium than I think when I remember when CDs came out and everybody just hated it because it was too clean, it was too crisp, because vinyl and tape, has a low end warmth that the preciseness of CDs don't have.
Well, and you also didn't get the full audio spectrum because you were compressing the sound so much. I mean, anytime you convert a file to a digital file, you're going to lose a lot of your high end and low end, and you're stuck with the middle.
I agree. My CDs just don't produce the sound the vinyl is, because I put some CDs in because it really tripped my mind, and I'm going, wait a second here. And so I threw a CD in there. And I'm going, man, this really isn't close.
Oh, it's clean, but it's not. It doesn't sound the same.
It's not the same. And it had been years since I sat down and listened to a vinyl record.
Yeah.
And I was so pleasantly surprised and so enjoyed it. It was just really cool.
Yeah. I mean, I think for a real music fan, there probably is nothing better than a vinyl record with a big set of can earphones going to the stereo plug in.
Oh, God, yes.
There's nothing like that.
Used to get stoned and listen to some really. iRobot was an excellent stoner album that way. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I remember when Dr. Dre first was introducing the Beats headphones. And everybody kept thinking, like, who's gonna wear these cans? Like that's the '70s. Who's gonna? And now, of course, everybody has a set of cans because you realize how much sound degradation you have coming out of earbuds. And I remember how much hate he got for that. And how actually, it's funny. I remember I was talking to my cousin, and he was telling me about a conversation he had with a friend of his, and they were talking about a new artist, Anderson .Paak, that's working with Dr. Dre right now, and he was just saying, I don't know, I don't know, it's gonna be all commercial sounding, and I was thinking, when did Dr. Dre become synonymous with commercial sounding? For the amount of, gangster records that he did. But I do suppose he's also had that kind of success too, with Eminem and all of the artists that he produced, which, like I said, gets me back to kind of the point of the show, so we said it's kind of part boredom, part the audience grows up and kind of aren't the consumer audience for you anymore. Some is just jealousy, which I think is a huge piece of that puzzle that nobody wants to admit.
No, that's me.
Yeah.
I'm very jealous of all of them.
Well, it's keeping yourself relevant too.
Well, yeah.
I think it's very hard for any artist or any band to keep themselves relevant over a long period of time. And that's extremely difficult thing to do.
I'll throw it because the relevance I think is a big one, and you had thrown out U2 earlier, and people forget that All You Can't Leave Behind album, which became synonymous with 9/11 and all that kind of stuff. That album was actually released in April and was a complete commercial disaster. And then 9/11 happened, and all of a sudden you start hearing that New York song everywhere you go, and all that kind of stuff. And it helped them to capture a moment in a weird way, but off of an album that never should have been relevant at all.
I agree. Bruce Springsteen, The Rising, that was relevant.
Yeah.
That was an impactful
Bruce Springsteen
album.
In the mid-'80s. He captured a voice in the 80s too, which is bizarre after having done it in the 70s. Yeah. And then you could argue did it again in the 90s.
He's really our best troubadour.
Probably so.
Yeah. So, before we close out this segment, if you're an artist out there and you're getting this hate, some of it may be very unfounded, and some of it may be very founded. You may want to look at what you're putting out there in the world, because there are definitely artists that every single time they come out, people are warm and receptive to what they're doing, because what they're doing, is really relevant in the moment. And sometimes you have to take a step back from, trying to produce an album every year, every 2 years, to do something that's going to be really relevant in the time. So one thing I can say for Jay is he won a lot of his audience back that was feeling a way about him with his last album, 444, because it's super relevant to today and to today's time. And sonically, he took a chance because it doesn't sound like anything out there. Now, of course, he doesn't have the youthful exuberance sonically as Kendrick Lamar or an artist like that, but his messaging and the fact that he chose to really go back to an updated version of an older production style is actually the thing that made him relevant again, like musically relevant again. Because from a business standpoint, I mean, he's relevant. And everybody knows that. I mean, he's the one who famously said, "I'm not a businessman. I'm a business man." And so as a businessman, people know his relevance. But I think musically, I think the biggest thing I was starting to hear with Jay was he's too rich. I don't get it. Like he's talking about
That was kind of my point.
Yeah, like he's hanging Basquiat paintings on his wall in his record. Like it's too much. Like I don't understand where you come. Like me personally, I have always been a fan, which is actually why I'm not a hater of Puff, because I'm a fan of kind of aspirational hip hop. I'm a fan of hip hop that is musically well produced.
And why shouldn't they be able to be good capitalists?
Well, hey, I'm not mad
But some people are, and that's the bullshit. This is America. You have the ability to be a good capitalist.
Yeah,
I don't think
and they will do good things with their money, hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah.
I don't think that's what always loses people. I think when it comes to an album, and you are worth $500 million easily, and you're trying to pull off rapping like you're still on the streets, and you're trying to keep up with that persona, you're going to lose everybody because it becomes artificial, and everybody knows you're just reaching. Well, and to Jay's credit, what I would say is this last album, he didn't try to do that, which I did like. And the songs were exceptionally revealing of him as a person and far more personal. Including a lot of his failings in some ways.
Which is why I think he really redeemed himself and got a lot of his fan base back on his side.
I think he came back to an honest point in the music.
Exactly.
And that's kind of what you want from almost any artist, is just give me a level of authenticity. And generally those are the albums or the paintings or books or whatever you want to say that will survive for the long run.
There you go. Yeah, before I close out this section, that got me to thinking about, and please don't show up looking for me, but that got me to think about 50 Cent. I love 50. I like all his records, but probably the reason he is not relevant musically right now, like he's got a TV show Power that's doing incredible numbers for the network that it's on, and all of that. But musically, he's still making the exact same records that he made, from Get Rich or Die Trying and that era of and that era is over. It's not 2002 anymore. You can't still be talking about shooting people. We know you're worth $250 million.
There's no vitamin water that's going to fix this problem.
No vitamin water that's going to fix it. The only way I think you gain relevance is what Jay did. If you're an older artist, you have to start peeling back the layers and revealing parts of yourself that people maybe don't know. And so, anyway, with all that, where I was going is, for some of the artists out there, some of the sport teams out there, actors, authors, anybody that's starting to feel hate and backlash, you may be right. Some of it may be unfounded, but also maybe take a look at what you're putting out in the world, because maybe it's good, but maybe it ain't great. And I think what people are looking for is great art. They're looking for great albums. They're looking for great books. They're looking for great movies. It's a whole lot of good, and good actually is the enemy of great. As a matter of fact, good is problematic for one reason. It's so much good that people can't really distinguish what that even is anymore. But they know when it's great. They when they see it, when they hear it, when they go in the store and they see it on the clothing rack, whatever it is, they know great. And they're always willing to buy into great.
You know something interesting? I've always found out as I listen to new music that if a song kind of caught my interest off the bat, but not fully, there's actually a song that I ended up having a long-term relationship with. And if it came out and it was catchy right off the bat, and hey, there's a catchy song, I found out it wore out on me quickly.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's because the song that didn't quite get me right off the bat had a lot more depth. And as I listened to it, and I came to appreciate it more, and then I went back into the albums and started listening to the album, realized there was a lot of good songs with a lot of good depth on them. It was kind of funny, but the little pop song to come out, it had a catchy little tune. That went away pretty quick.
Yeah. So
and I think that's some of the things you're talking about.
Yeah,
too.
absolutely. So, but before I close this section, last person that I want to mention that we didn't mention all segment is Drake. I think Drake's interesting because Drake has had about as much hate as love from the beginning. And I think it gets back to what we were saying about things that changed the genre. Like people hated Puff's sound and the Bad Boy sound kind of when it came out, and they really actually scoffed at the kind of the lush production coming out from Dr. Dre and that camp at the beginning. But I think Drake as an artist, because he was so introspective and so moody with his own music anyway, he received that type of hate from the beginning. But of course the numbers bear out that he's probably the most popular artist out currently, that the times were ready for a change that maybe people didn't see coming. And that actually brings me to something I don't want to discuss with the table, but it actually does bring me to where we are currently politically. And sometimes I think people read the tea leaves and they see things in it that conventional wisdom doesn't see. And that might be part of the reason that we're having so many issues and debates and whatever with our current presidential administration, because obviously they read the tea leaves differently than Hillary and her camp did, and they wound up in the White House and she didn't. So once again, if you're getting some hate out there, some of it may be unfounded, but sometimes check yourself too. See why did people not show you the love? Because maybe you're giving good, but you're not giving what is perceived as great, and that's what people are looking for. And with that, we'll be right back. Hey, you having a good time? Let me introduce you to a couple of my media brothers. First, www.americathemixtape.com, a cipher on American politics, society, and culture. And where'd I get that mixtape? Of course, www.cornerbodega.us, purveyors of urban culture. Come on, let's get back to the party. And we are back, and before we get out of here, let's talk about today's sugar, honey, iced tea. And for those that don't know, these are things that I or a member of the group have found that are really cool, aka the shit. And this week's sugar, honey, iced tea is saying hello to the bad guy. So in thinking about this, you got to remember one thing, I think. Everybody's good guy is not everybody's good guy. Some people hate this dude or this chick or whoever, and vice versa. Everybody's bad guy is not everybody's bad guys. Some people really find the good in that person, and in that, I'm not gonna kind of belabor the sugar honey iced tea section, but I will say you can't have the good without the bad. So if there's a person, an athlete, a musician, whomever that you find yourself really in love with or really hating, remember, there's somebody on the other side that's feeling the exact opposite way. And with that, I am going to end this podcast in the way I end all podcasts, and that is with the toast that started it all for me, and that is to good times with good people.